Welcome back to El Mago Recaps. Like and subscribe for more amazing recaps.
Our story begins with two mysterious figures facing off on a residential rooftop, where we can see a blue-flamed tiger fighting a long-haired guy who controls metal. Despite the tiger's skill, it doesn't take long for him to be defeated and ultimately captured by Infinity, the guild's most skilled executor. Far away, in a lively forest, a black kitten sleeps peacefully until the noise of machines and the commotion of other animals wake him up. After nearly being hit by a hail of gunfire, he decides to flee from the danger, but it's too late. The last thing he sees is a yellow excavator before the world goes black. Our little hero's name is Hei, and he wakes up amidst the trash, far from the forest where he grew up. He soon discovers some truths about this strange place. First, those flying white things weren't the forest spirits he was used to playing with. Second, food wasn't free. And third, the restaurant owner wasn't keen on sharing his fish. But hey, a cat's gotta survive, right? One day, while he was sleeping in his alley, a group of bullies came to attack him out of nowhere with clubs. Like any self-respecting cat, Hei fled, and not even his frightening form was enough to scare off the troublemakers. Luckily, he was saved by a guy with purple hair who told him not to be afraid while transforming into a sort of a cool black tiger. His name was Stormbend, and he invited Hei to follow him. Along the way, he explained that humans had abandoned that place, and it was where he and some other spirits lived. Hei seemed wary when he first met Bamboo and Sky Tiger and only watched Void, who was recharging his spiritual energy from afar. After he showed the others that he wasn't just a cat but a forest spirit like them, the group had dinner. The boy was amazed when Bamboo summoned several orange flowers seemingly out of nowhere, and was even more pleased when Stormbend invited him to live with them. The food was great, and the group was actually kind to him. There was no reason to refuse. Back in cat form, he went to sleep, reflecting on how good it was to be back in the forest after everything humans had done to him. Next day, the sound of fighting woke him up, and Hei ran to see what was happening. Stormbend's group was being attacked by Infinity, who, despite fighting against 4 elementalists, still had the upper hand. Stormbend asked him why he was attacking his group, and Infinity said the guild's orders were to take him back for trial. Thus, the group split up while Stormbend tried to buy them some time. However, Hei couldn't stand it and tried to help, only to be defeated instantly, but somehow allowing the others to escape. After waking up and searching all over the island, Hei realized that Stormbend and the others had really left. Infinity said he would take him to the guild, but Hei had no intention of going with him. After he tried to catch him off guard, Infinity tied him up with a metal band, and as soon as he finished building an improvised boat, they set off, much to the boy's dismay, who struggled until he grew tired. In a bittersweet mood, Stormbend's group discussed what their next steps should be. Bamboo ensured he had put a locator on Hei, so they decided to rescue him. Stormbend said he was tired of the guild and tired of waiting. Now was the perfect time for him to make his move, and so he headed toward his first target. The others were tasked with finding Hei and informing him once they did. Void and Bamboo summoned tracking fish in hopes of finding the boy before it was too late. Meanwhile, on the boat, Infinity had to divide his attention between pushing the boat, the sea creatures that could attack them at any moment, and Hei, who relentlessly tried to escape, almost drowning during one of his attempts during the day and being caught trying to sneakily escape at night with 2 coconuts, which he would probably use as a buoy. During a fierce storm, Infinity noticed a dragon flying in the distance and reflected on how rare this creature was. Hei really hated this cold and rainy weather and ended up falling off the boat at the same time that he unintentionally activated a sort of force field around him, protecting them both from a huge tsunami. He was unconscious. Infinity was amazed that someone so young could use the domain in this way and decided to fly away from the storm. Waking up, Hei, after vomiting, asked why they weren't flying from the very beginning. The executor said he couldn't fly for that long, and the boy said he was a weakling. Ignoring him, Infinity asked Hei to use his power again, and so the boy transformed into a huge cat-like creature and fell into the water. When he got back to his senses, Infinity opened a hole in the ground and told him to enter. Inside this blank world was a wooden house with some trees. Infinity said that this was his spiritual space and explained that it was the source of all life and power, mentioning that all spirits have a spiritual space, including Hei. but the boy's was totally blank because he had never trained. The executor said that since Hei was naturally talented, he would teach him how to control metal like him, but the boy, as always very distrustful, said he didn't want to learn anything from him. Infinity didn't insist, and so they left his domain, continuing their journey into the open sea. Meanwhile, Stormben visited his master and said he needed a favor. Master Min said he was happy to help as long as what he asked was allowed by the guild. When his former disciple didn't answer, Min told him there was no shame in moving on and leaving the past behind. The next day, one of Master Min's disciples found him unconscious in an area where there obviously was a fight, resulting in the funniest scene in this movie. After getting what he wanted from Master Min, Stormben visits the brush tiger, a spirit capable of bringing his paintings to life. After fighting against the various works of the talented master, such as birds, fish, and tigers, and destroying part of his shop, Stormben finds his true body. The spirit actually was a sort of red-eyed beaver, and commits one of the greatest crimes a spirit can commit against another. He steals his powers. Sky Tiger and the others are giving their all in the search for Hei, and now it's just a matter of time until they find him. Meanwhile, on the boat, Hei decides he will learn to bend metal and use that power to escape as soon as possible. Their lessons begin, and Hei proves to be very talented. The atmosphere between them becomes friendlier, and the young spirit starts to enjoy himself during the journey, even learning how to swim and push the boat alone. One night, he asks Infinity why he's after Stormbend. When Infinity doesn't respond, Hei questions if Infinity will let him go once they reach land. The strongest human working for the Spirit Guild confirms, and a few days later, as Hei eats raw fish, they finally arrive at a coastal town. Infinity invites Hei to lunch. They both eat a lot, but have to flee the restaurant when Infinity realizes his money has disintegrated and his phone isn't working, leaving him unable to pay the bill. Infinity reneges on his promise, and decides to take Hei with him. He tries to explain that the guild is the ideal place for a young spirit like him to live. Hei asks if there are other humans in this guild, and Infinity confirms, though most residents are spirits. Hei doesn't listen, saying he really dislikes humans and ends up having to be carried like a backpack by Infinity. In the following days, Hei tries everything to escape his captor, such as hiding, pretending to be the son of a woman bathing a child, attempting to attack Infinity from behind, and distracting him, but nothing works. Meanwhile, his mastery over metal improves, making Infinity proud. One night, as the executor explains that one of Hei's powers, domain, is a spatial ability similar to his own devour, other guild executors arrive. Hei seizes the chance to eat while they talk. One of the executors tells him the guild is a great place for young spirits to learn to live in harmony with humans, and contrary to Stormben's beliefs, humanity is either good or bad. They are like spirits, capable of both. The old spirit adds that Stormben's hate for humans makes him blind sometimes. Stream, a half-fox girl, expresses her love for humans and their inventions, saying Infinity is the best among them and has done much for the spirits. Before they leave, Infinity borrows money from them and uses it to rent a moped and buy some food. On the way, he continues explaining Hei's spatial power, revealing that each being can only have one spatial ability, and Hei's one is very rare, allowing him to use his domain outside his spiritual space, which would, theoretically, allow him to have godlike powers inside his domain area. Before sleeping, Infinity tells Hei that if he doesn't like the guild, he'll let him go, but he hopes Hei will use his power for good if he decides to leave. Hei assures him he will obviously use it for good, but doubts Infinity will let him go, concluding that neither Stormben nor Infinity are bad people. But Infinity isn't very nice either, earning a smile from the executor. At Brush Tiger's shop, the other guild executors discover Stormben stole his power, surprising them. The next day, Infinity shows Hei around Longu, explaining that thousands of spirits live alongside humans in that city. During a walk, they meet a half-elf girl, a friend of Infinity's who rushes off to deliver flowers after a brief conversation. At the train station, they are attacked by some people and Hei ends up being taken by two men. Infinity quickly locates and follows them, defeating one kidnapper swiftly. The second kidnapper is able to control people's actions, but Infinity defeats him easily. However, the first kidnapper returns to free his comrade from Infinity's grip. Infinity takes the fight onto the train and asks Hei to look after the passengers while he fights the last kidnapper. Hei, transforming into a giant cat and controlling metal, prevents the passengers from getting hurt by the battle's debris. After Infinity defeats his opponent, and before Hei leaves the carriage, a human girl thanks Hei for saving her, surprising him. On the roof of the train, Infinity jokes that Hei is quite popular with girls for someone who doesn't even like humans. And suddenly, Stormben's group arrives to rescue the young spirit. Infinity warns Hei to be careful because the kidnappers work for Stormben's group. The Executor does his best, but he has to split his attention between fighting against various skilled masters, keeping Hei safe, and protecting the people on the train. In the end, they take Hei after Stormben detonates the trails. Some minutes later, the leader of the Spirit Guild arrives and tells Infinity that Stormben has the ability to steal powers. Infinity says now he understands why he wants Hei so badly. After Infinity explained Hei's powers to the guild leader, the veteran says Hei's situation is much worse than Brush Tiger's because if Stormben steals Hei's powers, the young spirit will die within hours due to losing his domain. After Infinity goes after Hei, the guild leader orders all city borders closed and sends all executors after Stormben and his group. A catastrophe, however, seems unavoidable. At the top of a building alongside Hei and the rest of the group, Stormben explains to the young spirit that this city was once his home. Many spirits were born here and lived in harmony with the lively humans for a long time. Back then, he even liked humanity. But everything changed after the Industrial Revolution. With their new machines, humans were increasingly destroying the forest and driving away more and more spirits. While the guild worked to create an artificial harmony between humans and spirits, Stormben wanted his home back. The invaders were the ones that should leave. Hei suggested they could return to the island they were before Infinity arrived, but Stormben said that it wouldn't help. Humans always find a way to dominate and destroy everything. He reveals that Hei's power was perfect for his group to achieve their long-awaited revenge. The young spirit asks if that was the only reason they were so kind to him and expresses that he doesn't want to follow this plan. Disappointed, Stormben immobilizes Hei, and amidst Bamboo's protests, steals his power, condemning him to death. Immediately, Infinity senses the power used by Stormben, and as soon as he arrives, the group splits. Infinity follows Void, leaving Stormben to flee and focusing on rescuing the unconscious Hei. After leaving the young spirit with the guild leader and confirming that the only way to save him was by forcing Stormben to return his power, the hunt resumes throughout the city. Void, Sky Tiger, and the others buy time for Stormben to stabilize his new power, and that's exactly what he does before Infinity arrives, driven mad by what he did to Hei. Their fight begins, and Stormben doesn't even try to explain himself. He simply states that it's too late for him to return Hei's power. Still, Infinity doesn't give up and relentlessly attacks him. Stormben says he still doesn't understand where all this power from Infinity comes from, and after their fight literally destroys a building, he finally uses the domain, which starts spreading throughout the city as if someone was slowly extinguishing the light from the world. The Spirit Guild spares no effort to evacuate the city's inhabitants as quickly as possible. Their leader coordinates the entire operation involving the executors and several other spirits, while Infinity watches angrily as the domain spreads, knowing that inside, Stormben's power would be almost godlike. Still, the spirit couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Infinity simply invade his domain, well aware of the danger of entering another being's spiritual space. And inside it, Infinity's desperate attempt to save the young spirit began anew. Despite his undeniable mastery of metal bending, it soon becomes clear Infinity's disadvantage compared to Stormben, who gradually seems to better understand how to use the domain more effectively, hindering Infinity's movements and even stopping his attacks midair. Determined, Infinity decides to go all out, launching a barrage of metal at Stormben, who manages to escape unscathed and ends up completely immobilizing Infinity. Stormben blames him for what happened to Hei, saying that if not for Infinity, Hei would have followed his plan, and together they would have created a better world for the spirits. Just as he is about to deliver the final blow to Infinity, a giant paw attacks him, and on the other side of the city, Hei's body is replaced by that small black creature that always followed him. Hei's appearance catches Stormben off guard and the young spirit manages to hurl him away. Hei explains to Infinity that he woke up in a blank world not understanding what was happening. After a while he heard Infinity's voice calling for him and decided to follow it. Infinity tells him that in order to defeat Stormbend, he will need Hei's help. Within this domain, everything, big or small, is under Hei's control, and when Hei expresses uncertainty, Infinity assures him that they will do it together, and so the battle restarts. Hei takes the role of support, trying to counterbalance Stormbend's authority over his domain. Despite fighting together, the battle is far from easy, showcasing Stormbend's battle experience. Infinity continues to remind Hei that this is his spiritual space, and he is in charge of it, and after yet another attack from Stormbend, Hei manages to seize control of the domain, and working together with Infinity, captures the rebellious spirit. Stormbend begs Hei not to disperse the domain, saying it would condemn all the spirits, but he does so anyway. Despite being defeated, Stormbend declares that he will not live hidden, will not live in fear, and above all, will not leave his home. After apologizing to Hei, he merges his essence with the building, creating a beautiful artwork in the middle of the city. Once the battle was over, some guild members gathered. The group fly toward the Spirit Guild. After some tests they discover that Hei had 2 spiritual spaces, with that small black creature being part of Hei himself. Infinity informs him that Void and Bamboo have been captured and will remain imprisoned for a while. Hei meets the executor who captured Void, and after a brief conversation, the group arrives at the Spirit Guild. This sky island is truly beautiful and full of life. Stream offers to show Hei around the place. On opposite sides of the bridge, Infinity tells the young spirit that it's time for them to say goodbye. Hei asks why he has to leave if he lives there, and Infinity explains that it's complicated. He lives there, but because he is too powerful, he's not very welcome, so he only visits the guild occasionally. "You'll love this place," he says as he leaves, and it's as if a film plays in Hei's mind at that moment, recalling everything they experienced together, the hardships, but also how much he learned from Infinity. "Master," is all Hei can say, tears in his eyes, surprising Infinity, who, while hugging him, agrees to let Hei come with him as his new disciple. Touched Stream also wants to go with Infinity, but is stopped by another executor of the guild. And this, my friends, is how the Legend of Hei begins.